Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 9 of the Fordham Sports Analytics Roundup podcast. Today, we're joined by John Boy Media's Mannis. Max, how you doing, man?
What's happening, guys? It's good to be here. I appreciate it. As soon as I got the text from, are you Matt or Hoodie on this?
I think mainly Matt on this, which is interesting.
I can't remember the last time I called you Matt because you're known as Hoodie for your Twitter handle around the office. But yeah, as soon as I got the text from you being like, "Yo, let's hop on the pod," I was like, "I'm there." So yeah, it's cool. I'm glad it's finally coming to fruition.
So Max, just start us off. Like, give us a little background on yourself, your journey, where you came from, and then also what you do now. Just give us a little run through of that whole thing.
Yeah, sure. Stop me if I'm going too long, but I guess the long and short of it is always huge baseball fan, huge Yankees fan, like stats nerd, like as long as I can remember. Got my start, if you will, writing for Sports Illustrated Kids back in the day in like 2013, when I was 11, I think. So
we're going back a while here.
Yeah, going back a while.
Kids, baby.
Back in the day. So that kind of got me, I guess, my start in working in sports, if you want to phrase it that way. But yeah, I think for a while I kind of thought it was just like something fun I did was like writing about sports and baseball on the side. And then as I was doing it more and more and writing for other websites and listening to podcasts and stuff like that, I was like, oh, there's like an actual world here. That's not just a hobby. Like this is something people do professionally. Like, maybe I could do that. So I've known John Boy Jimmy for a while, had kind of spoken with him a handful of times about, maybe working for him when the time was right. It was always a matter of like, oh, we only have as much funding for this many staff, stuff like that. And then eventually it worked out. And yeah, here I am. So what I do for the company is I do social media is my title, but specifically within social media, my job on the team is like more specifically like stat research kind of oriented stuff, like bringing the deep cut baseball savant stat head type stuff that kind of differentiates us from the other pages that just post like, homer, diving catch clips, stuff like that. But kind of jack of all trades. So yeah.
Yeah, Max, great to meet you. I'm Peter. I should have introduced myself earlier. But,
all good. Peter, Max.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Did you collaborate with all the podcasts that John Boy runs, or just specific ones, or kind of just how does that layout work in terms of getting information out there?
Yeah, talking Yanks and talking baseball and like the main John Boy Media account definitely get most of my attention personally, but everyone who's on the social media team is contributing to pretty much everything we put out across the board, which is now like dozens of podcasts, which is pretty wild. So I mean, like we have, boxing stuff and like football stuff and stuff like that I'm not as involved in, but like there have been times where they're like, hey, if we're posting something here, we might as well collab it here because this creator's here and stuff like that. So I would say I personally don't like work as directly on those accounts, but it's all kind of intertwined at the end of the day. Like that's all of our responsibility to make sure that everyone's getting their fair share of coverage.
Yeah, I feel like if you follow like John Boy on Twitter, it's like you get every retweet from every sub account, and it's like, why do I have to follow these accounts? They're just gonna retweet each other. And I'm like, well, I may as well get the information here. But it's always good to see more things prominent in your timeline.
That means we're doing a good job, so I'm glad to hear.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. It's entertaining and it's educational, which I think is just a good blend, because I think a lot of people who want to get into baseball might be a little bit overwhelmed by the people who are saying analytics down your throat, and they don't really they might not have the time or the drive to kind of go out there and just kind of learn it themselves. So it's good to just get like a little bit of a flavor from entertainment as well. So
yeah, no, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that John Boy Media as a whole does especially well, and especially the on-air guys, but we try to apply to the social media team and stuff like that too, is like what you're saying, taking like those big, overwhelming, intimidating words like analytics and making them a little more digestible and just being like, hey, this is how this actually looks on the field in practice, that it's not just this huge statistic database with a lot of numbers that are scary. So yeah.
Yeah, stats that exist but do not matter. That's
pretty much.
You guys get a little more of that. I love that.
I'll pass the message along.
Yeah.
So Max, let's talk about the Yankees. We could do this for a while, but the question I've been liking to ask people is, you're handed the opening day lineup right now. Who do you want to see as shortstop and left field?
Who do I want to see?
Who do you want to see? Yeah, you can say who do you want to see first,
okay.
and then you can get into who do you think it will be. I think both those questions I think are cool.
I think want to see, as far as if we're talking strictly entertainment value, I don't know how anyone cannot say Volpe at this point. Like, there's, the more rational arguments to be made of like, oh, he's played, like 4 games at AAA, not 4, but like barely any games at AAA. And, like the service time manipulation stuff sucks, but like if it's there, we know the teams are going to use it. Like, that's just how the Yankees operate. But if we're talking strictly entertainment value and trying to win the baseball game, which is the objective of the game, then I think Volpe is the pretty clear-cut answer there. Left field, I think it's tricky because we all love Oswaldo. Like, anyone who doesn't like Oswaldo Cabrera, I'm like, all right, what's going on here? But I personally, the reason I'm kind of okay with Hicks getting the left field job is that I think Oswaldo's value is that he can play 5 positions for you every single week, and that he can play shortstop one day and right field and left field and second and third and like all consecutive days. And it doesn't matter. Like, we've seen, like Glaber, for example, you toss him at shortstop. We saw it didn't just affect his defense. Like, his offensive stats were also way down in the games where the Yankees were moving him around a lot and like trying to find a good fit. And makes sense. Like, for some guys, like Stanton too. Stanton says the games where he's DHing as opposed to when he's playing the outfield, he's not nearly as locked into the game. Like, he needs to be like really in it. Oswaldo, we like haven't seen that at all. Like, Oswaldo is incredibly impressive that at his age, he is not phased at all by moving around. So in my opinion, I think, like, listen, we all, like, I still like Aaron Hicks, hot take in the Yankees world. I know, I appreciate everything he did for us back in the day, the Houston homer, everything. Is he the most ideal person in the world to be playing left field regularly? Probably not. He's also probably better than a lot of options that are out there, which a lot of Yankees fans probably don't realize, because Yankees fans tend to operate within a bit of a more nearsighted mindset on those kinds of things a lot of the time. So I would say I'm like fine enough with having Hicks out there if it means that Oswaldo is going to be like his usage is really going to be maximized as far as like getting the most out of him that they can, which does get tricky because IKF is also supposedly going to be like the utility guy if they keep him. So I really don't know how that's going to work out, but I guess as of this point, I guess for one game, I'd like to see Oswaldo out there and left because I like him as a baseball player right now more than Hicks. But I think I don't mind having Hicks out there generally because of what it allows for Oswaldo to do with his versatility.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then what do you think it will be?
Well, I think it'll be Peraza and Hicks, most likely.
Okay,
They could do the funk like they've been doing Judge and left and Stanton and right and stuff like that. My guess is they only do that like 10, 15 times over the course of the year. Like, here or there, like, all right, bats are really slumping. We need to get Giancarlo in there. All right, fine. We'll toss Judge and left and figure it out. I don't think they want that to be a regular occurrence. But yeah, who knows? Like, the Yankees are tough to predict. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I do agree with you though. I think it's going to be Peraza, short, Volpe in the minors, and probably Hicks out there. One picture has really stood out this spring training is Clark Schmidt, and now with the injuries, he's going to be in the rotation. So I was kind of curious, Max, like, what are your expectations of him? Like, how long do you think he can stick in the rotation? Because, it's Rodon's already throwing again and stuff, so he'll be back at some point soon. So, yeah, what do you think about Clark Schmidt? What are your expectations? Are you, like, high on him, low on him? What's your deal with him?
I like to think I'm generally a pretty positive Yankees fan, like maybe to a fault. It's just like, sure, he'll be good. Like, why not? So I'll try to give a little more analysis than that. I think it was interesting. I was working on a clip a couple of weeks ago on the PPP for Clark Schmidt, the player profile projections. Check that out from Talking Yanks. And Jake was talking about how Yankees have like messed with Clark Schmidt a lot the last few years. Like the fact that they like didn't really want to have him in the big leagues last year. He was like a spot starter at points, and then he was closing out ALDS Game 3, which Hoodie and Matt and I were watching on the couch together in the Jawboy Media Lounge, and that was not a fun night. A very memorable night, but not a fun one. The Yankees have messed with this guy a lot to the point where it's kind of hard to actually predict what we're going to get of him, because it's so easy to say like, oh, he's been good in spring training. Like he threw 5 perfect innings the other night, but like Higgy was also, the home run king in spring training last year, and not exactly in the regular season. So spring training, bit of a grain of salt. But I do think that the Yankees like Clark Schmidt. Like, even if they've messed around with him and stuff like that, I think they've done that because they genuinely see something in him. They haven't done that because they're just like trying to make something stick by like throwing it at a wall and just like hoping there's something there. Like, they invested a first round pick in this guy. They've stuck by him through a lot of injuries and stuff like that. So I think this seems like his first like real legit shot to actually get a chance to stick in the rotation. At this point, it feels like it's in his hands. The tricky thing is, we don't know, is Rodon going to be back, late April or early June? Like, I wouldn't be totally shocked by either outcome. So when push comes to shove, are they going to like Clark Herman? Like, that could become a very interesting discussion. For Clark's sake, I kind of hope that he's the one who sticks in the rotation over Herman, just because we've seen Herman do it out of the bullpen. We've seen them like him in that role before. And Clark just like feels the guy that they'd rather be invested with future in the team.
Yeah, you think maybe they do like a little bit of a bullpen day on those Clark days, maybe not stretch him out too much, maybe just kind of like keep him what he's good at, right? Because he doesn't have too many weapons to be in the rotation right now. You'd hope that he could develop, a little bit more, but I think maybe make those bullpen days ideally, right? And then kind of see where Rodon comes back, and then kind of flush him back into maybe a long man position throughout the season. But that, that's just kind of, my uninformed projection right now.
No, it's definitely possible. Like, the Yankees like their piggyback days. So it's definitely a possibility.
One cool thing about Clark, Peter, that I think actually could give him a shot to be a legit starter is his cutter he's added this spring, which I think is his solution to getting lefties out. So like that pitch, and I think I read an article and like opposing managers or like just league scouts or something were saying that it looks like legit. So if the cutter could become a legit weapon to get lefties out, then then my mind starts racing like, this dude could be a starter for us for the next 4 years, 5 years. But getting a little ahead of myself, because people had new pitchers in spring training every year, and then by July they phase them out. But I do actually have a lot of hope in the Clark Schmidt cutter, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, I will say, I think that when they traded Jordan Montgomery last year, I think their plan was very much for Clark Schmidt to like be the guy next year. Cool. I very much think that was in the plans. I don't know if that's going to end up happening. We know that now that Montas is a non-factor, like, that's kind of become less of a luxury and more of a necessity. But I do think that like there's a world where Clark Schmidt is like the Yankees' number 4, number 5 starter for the next 4 years. And like, are any of us like totally shocked? Like, we probably shouldn't be. Like, he's still like, it feels like he's kind of been around for a little while now, but he's still like young enough that's very much in play. But this year feels like a very big make or break year for him. So
yeah, the cutters are the sexy trend right now. So I didn't know that, but thank you. Yeah,
there you go, Matt Blake.
Yeah, Max, let's transition into the WBC. And this, we usually release our episodes like a little bit after they're recorded, so let's not talk too much about like the specific who do you think will win, USA or Japan. But more, I'm just more interested in your thoughts on like, what do you think it's done for the game? What are your thoughts on, the whole Edwin Diaz discourse and all that? And what are your overall, what was like one of your overall like biggest takeaways or favorite moments from the tournament?
Yeah, I mean, the Diaz and like injury discourse got like very tired on Twitter and online very quickly. And I think that we realized really quickly that it was like a very vocal minority that was saying like that this is bad enough that they shouldn't do the WBC at all. Like, it doesn't matter, or they should just like do it in November, which really doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I don't think you're going to get any interest in it then.
And I feel like there'd be more injuries then.
Yeah, well, yeah,
because guys just went through a full season,
like the Yankees bullpen falls apart in October every single year, like for as long as I can remember, and now we want them to go play another month. Like I don't think there is a perfect time to do it. Like, I think this is probably as good as it gets. Kind of like, one of my friends mentioned to me like, oh, what if you did the preliminary rounds now and then like made the All-Star break a few days longer and just had like the playoff games then, which kind of makes sense a little bit, but then you don't have like the actual stars in the preliminary rounds really, like, so you don't know how like, actually representative it would be.
I think what makes it so good is like the chemistry and like the fact that it's like, all right, this group of guys is like together for the past 2 weeks and like it's just them like on this journey. Like, if you split it up and there's a 3-month break in there, like that just takes away that whole like camaraderie factor. Like, you know, like Puerto Rico dyeing their hair blonde. Like, what are they gonna do? Dye it blonde for like a week, 5 days, like shave their heads and then re-dye it blonde like in July. Like, I don't, you know, like that's such a big factor of it for me. Because it's like a tournament. Like at the end of the day, it's like, you know, if you grew up like playing youth baseball, like you know what a tournament like feels like. And that's really, it's just a tournament with adults is really how I've kind of seen the WBC. Like this year I've kind of realized that. I'm like, oh, it's just these are just like big dudes like doing the same stuff that I used to do when I was a kid, like for 2 weeks. Like it's so cool. So yeah, I don't think splitting it up is a solution. I think March is not a good time, but it's still the best time.
I think also like
I agree.
One of the strengths of WBC is just like we are waiting for baseball for how many weeks and months, right?
Yeah.
After the end of the World Series, and all of a sudden you get smacked right into like
instantly get it.
Like you get a wild card game every day for like what 5 days, pretty much. It's like it's great. I mean, OG wild card game right now, like last year, but we all remember those. So I mean, it's really just I don't know. I think it's the strength of the sport to see all these guys. Like this is definitely the most star-studded group, and I just think that you know I think we're going to see more participation as the years go on. I think it's going to get stronger and stronger every year. I hope that the talent level gets up to the plane that's like respected at the World Cup. I can't say that with any certainty because I see USA at least doesn't have nearly any of our best pitchers out there. I mean, no disrespect to any of the guys in the field this year because it's much stronger than previous years, but still, imagine if we had like Grom, just like
that would be sick.
It would a little bit honestly a little bit unfair, but you know, USA is such a big country. It's like, what are you gonna do? But I think it's really been a really balanced tournament. Also, I think it's just like to see Mexico go that far. I don't think we've ever seen them go that far.
Yeah, that was a great run for Mexico.
Yeah, we've never seen them go that far, and they had a great team. They deserved it, and they were underrated. And I think we had one of the meetings a few weeks ago. We were like, dude, this team's pitching is stacked. And
night, we were going through the rosters at one of our meetings, and Mexico stood out.
Yeah, and we were just like, dude,
interesting
don't sleep on them. And I just like, I don't know, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, those places are going to be, you know, strong beds of baseball for a long time and have been obviously. But then, you know, hopefully you get more stars out of Mexico from like young kids seeing, whoa, this is really cool. And obviously Randy Arozarena.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, Max. I was just going to ask you, Max. Like, as of the time we're recording this, the final game hasn't happened yet, but so there could be something that happens that tops your favorite moment. But what has been your favorite moment from the tournament? Mine personally was Randy Arozarena's robbed home run. But do you have like a favorite moment from the tournament?
I'm biased. I'm a big Team Israel guy because I'm Jewish.
Oh,
I spent
of course.
Years living there.
Yep.
So they basically game one against Israel's pool was Israel, Nicaragua, and then the Dominicans, the Venezuelans, and the Puerto Ricans. So between Israel and Nicaragua, like one of them was going to get bounced and have to requalify, and they played in the first game. So it was going to be like, all right, basically whoever wins that game is going to avoid relegation.
Talk about an important game right off the bat.
That was a big game. And they like didn't hit all game and then just put up 3 runs in the 8th off Jonathan Loaizaga, which was very hard for me to root against. But Garrett Stubbs had like a huge go-ahead double with 2 outs in the 8th to put them on top, and then he woke up the next morning with knee soreness and like went back to the Phillies. But that was electric. And then last night, like Peter, exactly what you're saying. Like we are fiending for like competitive baseball for so long, and like by week 3, even week 2 of spring training, we're all just like, all right, we don't need to do another 4 weeks of this. Like we get it. Like Billy McKinney is like, I've seen enough of these at bats. No disrespect to Billy McKinney, but it's there was something about watching I think Hoodie, you tweeted like this was a top 10 baseball game I've ever watched, and I was immediately like, yes, like great take, like fully agree. I had the realization, I think it was during that PRDR game, where the one that Diaz got hurt at the end of, that I realized like one of the, people like to throw out the question a lot of if you could show someone like one baseball game, one baseball moment to like make them become a baseball fan, what would you pick? And I realized like I don't think I've ever considered the WBC at all in considering any answer to that question. It might be the WBC. If you want to sell someone on just like, here's one game, check out this environment, check out what this sport has to offer, like, you know, Cubs and then Indians game 7 2016, like sure, awesome game. Dodgers Astros, like, you know, you can go on and on. But there was something about that environment and just that energy in the stadium where Like players were piling out of the dugout and celebrating at home plate for a home run in like the second inning. Like you just do not see that in MLB, no matter how high stakes the game is. And these guys are like the Yankees win the World Series, like the players, you don't even have to get started on just how hype that would be. But it's like a different level of energy when you see all of Team USA like getting hyped for Trey Turner, like a guy who's won a World Series before, been in the playoffs most every year of his career, and he was like, "Yeah, that grand slam was the biggest home run of my career." Like that's really saying something. So yeah.
Yeah, it's just cool how the emotions are like on 100, and then like also just the talent on the field. Like that's why I like when I was thinking about like right after that game ended, the semifinal Mexico-Japan, I was just sitting there like that's definitely a top 10 game I've watched. It's just the talent. Like Sasaki and Yamamoto are like insane.
Gross.
And then obviously Otani and Yoshida and Murakami, like those guys are insanely talented. Then a Rosarena, Sandoval, the Mexico team is very talented too. I was just like, the amount of insanely talented players on the field is nuts. And I can't even imagine DR and US met in the semifinal. That's like legitimately like an all-star game, like an MLB all-star game being played, but in a tournament style. Like I wish that happened, but yeah, like it's mind-blowing the amount of talent that like the WC has been able to get on the field this year. Like it's amazing.
Yeah, that like you could make a very strong argument that a US DR championship would have been like the two best baseball, maybe not teams, but baseball lineups ever assembled. Like I don't think that's a stretch at all to say. It does kind of suck that we had like, Nestor and Kershaw, and the DR had some pitchers too that I think didn't make it in the end.
Framber,
and that much sucked. Yeah, Framber. But like the lineups were, even with Vladdy not being able to play and stuff like that, like those lineups were absolutely nuts to see on paper.
Yeah. All right, Max. We'll transition to our last topic here, and I think a lot of people are, curious about how to, possibly get a career in, either sports media, sports, or whatever, anything related. So my question for you is, what advice would you give to someone who's looking to get into sports media or just sports in general as a career?
Yeah, I think whenever people ask me this, I try to preface this sometimes with like, oh, like my journey's a little unique. Like I kind of did stuff on my own.
Same here. I have to say the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is funny because I used to say that a lot, and I would be like, oh yeah, I don't know, like, maybe don't take my advice because I just like did it on myself and then met a person who helped me out. And then it's like, wait, no, that's like how a lot of people get here. Everyone's story is unique, but it's not unique in that everyone's just like, yeah, I don't know, I worked hard on my own and kind of just worked out. Like there is like a pipeline there, and it's maybe not that direct, and like you do need a little bit of luck and circumstance and stuff like that. But like if you're able to take time by yourself, like before getting started on any company or anything like that, and just say like, I'm going to teach myself Photoshop, Premiere, like how to write, like whatever it is. Those are skills that some of them are like very niche and specific to baseball or like working in sports specifically. A lot of them are general skills that help you out with a lot of stuff. Like I've felt, for example, that I like writing was how I got my start in baseball stuff in this like world, if you will. And I've noticed recently, now that I like, one of the things I've started doing more recently for us at John Boy Media has been working on Premiere to do like 1 minute like reels and shorts to like chop up podcasts and stuff like that. And I realized that the skills that I learned from writing, as far as just like story structure and cohesion and stuff like that, you might not think that on the surface level that applies to video editing. But when you need to take an hour-long podcast and find a 3-minute clip within it that you want to make a 1-minute clip, that stuff is really important. And knowing like, okay, what can we cut out? How do we need to structure this? Like, what transitions do we want to have here? That's stuff that very much applies to a whole ton of avenues. So I think like doing things that open up a lot of doors, I think is very helpful. Like I know a lot of people who are studying like sports management and stuff like that. And I think there are, like, not to bash on that at all, like I know plenty of people who have gotten into sports management and had very successful careers that way. But I also know a whole ton of people who have like gotten a degree like that and then kind of realized like, it's a little niche. Like it doesn't really open as many doors as I thought it would, unless sports management, like specifically, is the thing that I wanted to do. So I think the best advice I can give people is just like, don't box yourself in. Like, teach yourself how to do things on your own time. Do it by yourself. Like, it doesn't matter how many subscribers, likes, whatever you get early on. Like, it truly does not matter. Like, I know when we're looking at, like, not that I'm involved in the hiring process at all, but I know that the number one thing that we look for when we're looking for job applicants is people who have like done it, not people who are just like, hey, if you hire me, like I'll learn Premiere, or like I'll start an awesome podcast for you guys. Like, yeah, I'm sure you would. But yeah, there's something to be said for being able to say, hey, I've been, running an Instagram page and learning Photoshop or learning how to write for 3 years. And sure, maybe I only have 500 followers instead of 100,000, but there's something to be said for like, I know the grind, and I know that it's not just a 162 game season. Like, there's a lot more, people asking like, oh, what do you do during the off season? Like, do you work? And it's like, yeah, there's still plenty of stuff to get done during the off season. So there's something to be said for teaching yourself those skills as much as you can on your own, and then just like getting accustomed to that grind, because it's not just about the playoffs. It's not just about the season. It's like year long. But yeah, like connections is big, as it is in anything. But yeah, like I guess to bring it all together, like my and your hoodie, Matt, your story is just like, yeah, I don't know, like I kind of more or less oopsed my way into it, like a little bit, but also like not really. Like that is kind of just like the natural progression of like, yeah, work on your own, like get that stuff done, and then when opportunity comes, like you're really ready. So yeah.
Yeah, I love what you said about how like two skills that kind of seem like they're not related actually can be extremely helpful to one another. Like, yeah, like when you're making one of those clips, it's really identifying, okay, what's the theme? How could we transition what one person said to what another person said and make the whole thing connect? Like that's essay writing. It's just in video form. So it's really interesting. And then another thing that like I think is really important, and you kind of alluded to it, is like in just terms of connections. Like I think one thing that we've discovered as we've run this club for the last 3 years is like people are way nicer than you'd expect, like when you reach out to them a lot of the times. Like never in a million years would I have thought that we could have hosted like Jeff Passan as a guest speaker. But we reached out to him, and yeah, it helped that we got to know unfortunate MLB, and he goes to Fordham. Yeah, sure, like that helps. But we reached out to him, and he was like one of our nicest guest speakers we've had. Yeah, even though he was by far the most, famous, if you want to say. But at the end of the day, like everyone's really a human being, and yeah, does ego get to some famous people? Sure. But a lot of people are just nice human beings. So that's another thing I'd say, like reaching out to people, like people are nicer than you'd expect a lot of the times.
Yeah, just like in terms, just like pure response rate. I mean, like when we like started the podcast, right, like 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, right, like we reached out to a ton of people, and at first we were overwhelmed with how many people came back. And they were like,
yeah, we were like too many people responded to us.
It's like space you guys out. I was like, can you wait a month or so? So I mean, like, especially I feel like in this industry, I feel like everyone's coming from that like a little bit of a, I did it myself background, and all of a sudden I kind of feel like I have to push that and give other people that opportunity and tell them a little bit more about how they can become more successful in whatever field they want to go into in sports, whether that be in journalism or pure analytics or some sort of entertainment, right? It's just it's a very giving community. I think that's one of the strengths. Yeah,
100%. I remember being like a sophomore in high school and like getting like Brian Oak to respond to one of my tweets, and I'll be like, oh my god, he has 100,000 followers on Twitter. That's crazy. And then once you like grow up a little bit, and like whether that's age or just like getting into the industry or whatever it is, and you realize like, oh, like everyone here is just like pretty chill adults who kind of just like want to help each other out, because like cross promotion helps all of us. Like, yeah, like there's no downside for any of those people to hop on a podcast, to like hop on a call for 15 minutes and be like, yeah, I think this is a helpful skill to learn. Like exactly what you're saying. Like people are very willing to help out, because Peter, of exactly what you said, that everyone remembers where they were when they were just getting started, and like, man, I would really love if someone could help me out right now, like just to get a couple years and just like figure this out. And everyone remembers like, oh, someone helped me out then, so then I have to pass it on and do that now. So yeah, I think that's like I don't know if that's a baseball thing or a media thing or what it is, but it's a cool pipeline.
And I think Twitter is just like, I mean, obviously we know the power of Twitter, but I mean, just power.
Yeah.
Like Twitter, like what community has ever been so easy to get into and then show your strengths, and all of a sudden you explode from, right? You put something out, you put good work out, right? All of a sudden you explode. It's all deserving, right? It's not, it's not biased towards, oh, you're a friend of a friend, and I'm going to help you get on to work at this newspaper or something like that. It's it's much more skill based, and I think that's why you get so many great people succeeding. But definitely,
yeah, totally, 1,000,000%.
All right, Max. Well, if you don't have anything else for us, we'll probably call it an episode. Thanks so much for coming on. Great combo as always,
man.
Thank
you guys for having me. This was a lot of fun. I'm glad we made it work out. Always. When you told me that I was hopping on the podcast, I was like, all right, most likely it's going to be 30 minutes of talking about like the Yankees, baseball, statistics, and Twitter. So that should not require much prep. So yeah, thank you guys for having me on. I'm glad we were able to make it work it out.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Max.
All right, cool. All right, later, guys.